15 minutes past 2 in the morning, December 16th, 1811. On the Mississippi River, at the far western tip of what is now Kentucky, the ground began to move. A woman named Eliza Bryan was there. Her words: "A very awful noise, resembling loud but distant thunder, but more hoarse and vibrating. The earth," she wrote, "was visibly waving as a gentle sea. The river itself ran backward." This is Dark History of Western Kentucky. Tonight, the fault under our feet, the winter it broke, the day we thought it would break again, and what the record says about next time. The closest thing this region has to a witness of its own is a Kentucky boatman named Mathias Speed. On the night of February 6, 1812, he moored his flatboat on the reach of the river that borders what is now Fulton County. Before dawn, the biggest shock of the sequence, survivors just called it the hard shock, tore the river open underneath him. His words, written 3 weeks later: "We were affrighted with the appearance of a dreadful rapid of falls in the river just below us. All hopes of surviving was now lost, and certain destruction appeared to await us. The earthquake had lifted the riverbed and dammed the Mississippi. Speed rowed his boat over a waterfall that had not existed the day before, over ground cracked, in his words, in numberless places for 10 or 12 miles. He lived. He came ashore across the river from what would one day be Paducah." Here is the part of this story nobody can tell. In 1811, this was not Kentucky. Everything west of the Tennessee River was Chickasaw country, and would be for 7 more years. No county, no courthouse, no newspaper. The white record of these earthquakes runs to hundreds of pages. The record of what happened to the people who actually lived here is silent. How many Chickasaw died in the worst earthquakes in American history, no one wrote down. The land remembers. The people who could have told us were never asked. It did not happen once. It happened all winter. December 16th. A second great shock at dawn. Another in January. The hard shock in February. In Louisville, a man named Jared Brooks built pendulums and counted 1,874 shocks in 3 months. His words: "It seemed as if the surface of the earth was afloat. People felt it from the Gulf Coast to Quebec. The area of strong shaking was 10 times the size of the great San Francisco earthquake of 1906. How big was it? Honest answer, straight from the seismologists. Somewhere between a strong 7 and a low 8, and they still argue about it. 2 centuries of retelling have grown some tall tales, so let's be straight. Church bells did not ring in Boston. That story confused Charleston, South Carolina with Charlestown, Massachusetts. The bells rang in Charleston. That is documented, and 800 miles is astonishing enough. The river really did run backward, for minutes, not days. The uplift dammed the Mississippi at Kentucky Bend and sent the current the wrong way while the water piled up, then poured over 2 temporary waterfalls until it wore them away. And the story that Tecumseh stamped his foot and promised the earth would shake, that is a story told afterward, never written down at the time. We tell you which is which. That is the deal on this channel. The earthquakes made a lake. At Reelfoot, just across the Tennessee line, the ground dropped and the river poured in over a standing forest. Early photographs show the drowned trunks still rooted where they grew. And in Kentucky, at the Bend, the fault left its signature above ground. A scarp, a step in the earth, up to 12 feet of displacement, measured by coring crews as recently as 2019. It is still there. You can stand on it. The fault did not die. It went quiet. In 1990, a business consultant from New Mexico named Iben Browning looked at the moon. He was a zoologist by training, a clever, strange man who had once studied steering donkeys with brain electrodes and who advised Wall Street on the weather. He calculated that on December 3, 1990, the pull of the moon and sun on the Earth would peak, and he gave even odds that the new Madrid fault would tear open again, 179 years after 1811. His words, to a room of businessmen: "The gun goes off only if it's loaded. I don't know whether the fault is loaded or not, but the trigger will be pulled." Scientists checked the math. The Federal Earthquake Prediction Council's finding, verbatim: "The prediction does not have scientific validity." One seismologist said you could pick dates by throwing darts at a calendar and get the same result. It did not matter. A University Earthquake Center director in Missouri endorsed him. In September, a real magnitude 4.7 rattled the region, and every doubt felt like denial. Television found it, and an entire region began planning its life around a date. You remember this, or your parents do. In the 17 counties around Paducah, all but a handful of schools announced they would close on December 3rd and 4th. Callaway County High School was one of the handful that stayed open. 1,600 members of the Kentucky National Guard were placed on call. The Adjutant General's words: "We will be standing by breathlessly." School districts surveyed parents and found up to 40% planned to keep their children home either way. And because Kentucky funded schools by attendance, one system put the cost of closing at $40,000. 30 districts later asked the state for relief. The state's answer, from the man who took the calls: "The answer I have to give to them right now is no." The Paducah Sun rode the story like everyone else. A special earthquake supplement, casualty tables, preparedness ads. Then, in the last week of November, the editor stopped. He banned earthquake stories from his own front page until the date passed, and told the Louisville paper why. His words: 99% of the people in the media think this guy is not credible, and yet it's just filling up our newspapers. After it was over, he wrote the piece the whole industry read. His question: did the nation's editors and news directors send them all there to die? Or did we send them there to scare the hell out of people? December 3rd came to New Madrid, Missouri, population 3,300, with more than 200 news organizations on its streets and 30 satellite trucks along Main. The diner opened on a Sunday for the first time ever and sold Quake burgers. The bar threw a party called Shake, Rattle, and Roll. The Chamber of Commerce sold T-shirts that said, "It's our fault." A seismologist gave the wire services their quote of the day: "We are about to witness the greatest non-event since the War of the Worlds." Nothing happened. No earthquake came to New Madrid. In that whole 10-day window, the Earth did not produce a single magnitude 6 anywhere on the planet. The government's own post-mortem put it in one line: December had passed, and the Earth did not whimper. Iben Browning went home to New Mexico, went silent, and was dead of a heart attack within 8 months. He never took it back. Here is the part that outlived the circus. The scientists who called Browning's date nonsense said something else in the same breath. That is no reason to be complacent. The government's current numbers for this fault, verbatim: a 7 to 10% chance of a repeat of 1811 within 50 years. A 25 to 40% chance of a magnitude 6 or larger. The most seismically active area of the United States east of the Rockies, under this region's feet. The federal planning scenario says the Cobb Bridge at Paducah would be unusable, the highway bridges heavily damaged, and western Kentucky without power and water for days or weeks. The study's phrase for what 15 downed river bridges would do: separate the region into two. That is why, in the 8 far western counties, and only there, Kentucky law lets earthquake insurers set your deductible at 20% of your home's value. And it is why, by Kentucky law, every school in this state runs an earthquake drill twice a year. Once in the first 30 days of school, and again every January. Your children already practice for this. Ask them. They know to drop, cover, and hold on. Down at Kentucky Bend, the far corner of the far corner of Kentucky, there is a low step in a farm field. 12 feet of displacement, made in seconds, one winter night in 1812. The last time the trigger was pulled, almost nobody lived here. The record of that winter is a handful of letters from people passing through. The next time, the record will be us. Browning was wrong about the date. Nothing in the record says never.